Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the Awesome Walter YouTube channel. I really needed to talk about this. This was the documentary called Robin Williams, Come Inside My Mind. It was a documentary that just got put up on HBO not too long ago. I think it was touring around at some festivals earlier in the year, but it was just put up on HBO. I did the top 10 best Robin Williams performances. It was a two-part video, and those are on Channel Awesome right now if you want to check those out. And that was very therapeutic for me because growing up and all the way up until the point when he died, I was a big fan of Robin Williams. And he was such a big part of growing up for me and discovering the deeper parts of his work as I got older and, learned more about him and things. You really discover what a genius this guy was. So it was something I had to do for that top 5. And I had like a little ditty at the end where I sort of just went off script and just improv'd a little talk about him, and this felt like something I really needed to talk about here on the channel. So I want to just for a few minutes give you a little bit of a review on this one, and right away I'll say check it out. If you don't have access to HBO or HBO Go or anything like that, I would try to find it somewhere, try to rent it. I'm not sure where you can get it, maybe Amazon or something if you don't have HBO. But it's something, if you're a big Robin Williams fan, you should definitely see. Right away with this documentary, the structure is very interesting at first. It's mostly comprised during like the first half hour of just narrations from Robin Williams. You just hear him, like little bits of interviews and things like that, and you just hear his voice, and that's laid under some footage of him, on the TV shows he was on, like Mork and Mindy, and like doing stand-up. And the thing about this is that it goes really deep on all aspects of his life. So we get to see things from the very beginning. We get to see how he was, with his mom and dad. His dad was a very serious person. His mom was the very funny one, and that's where he got sort of his sense of humor. Later in the documentary, it goes into how he had these two half-brothers. His half-brother, they had the same mom, and one of his other half-brothers, he had the same dad. So it was a very interesting relationship that he had with those his two brothers, because they all were raised separately. So he didn't have a sibling growing up, but he did have these siblings, and sort of how that kind of affected him as he got older and things. So they go really deep on his rise through the comedy ranks, moving to San Francisco and then coming out to LA and then doing Mork and Mindy and things like that. They have interviews with a lot of big name people: David Letterman, Billy Crystal, a lot of stuff with Billy Crystal. Him and I guess Billy Crystal were very, very close, and they even play voicemail messages that Robin left for Billy Crystal during this. So it's very affecting hearing him talk about his friend. Steve Martin, we have interviews with, Whoopi Goldberg, and more. So definitely no shortage of people that wanted to talk about Robin and the genius that he really was. So that's just one aspect of it. I mean, there's interviews with them, and there's interviews with Robin, cut throughout the movie, but the thing that makes this very unique, I'd say, is that it really goes into territory that you wouldn't think it would go into. They talked to one of his wives, his first wife, and just going into talking about like what he was like in private, and we interview one of his sons. That was a very, very telling interview. Whenever we see him pop up throughout the documentary, he really approaches speaking about his father in a way that no one else in the documentary really could do. This is his son. This is someone who knew him very well and sort of regretted not being able to be around him more while he was growing up, because he divorced his mother, and this, I believe that was his second marriage, and he was just, touring around USO and going around and making movies, and his schedule was so insane. They interviewed Lewis Black at one point, and he's saying that his schedule was just nuts, going from this USO tour to immediately going to shoot a movie and just going back to back to back. He was always on the move, Robin Williams was. So, and that, matches up with his personality from what we know as him. I mean, he's such a manic presence on stage when he was doing stand-up or even in movies. We all know the personality that we all know as Robin Williams. So it's just very interesting to see all these different perspectives on his life and the different eras of his life. There's a lot of popular songs played throughout. They have some behind-the-scenes stuff on not just his movies like Aladdin and 1 Hour Photo. They have some really good stuff behind the scenes on that. What I ranked as his top performance was 1 Hour Photo. So seeing the director talk about that movie and seeing some behind-the-scenes footage was really eye-opening for that kind of character. But it goes into like these home movies of him at home, and then even at his oldest son's christening, and we see that Christopher Reeve was his his first son's godfather. So it's just got all these little details that we would never know about, all within this almost 2-hour little package here. It really warms your heart to feel that, everyone felt this way about Robin Williams. He was such an amazing talent that really made you feel like you knew him. Everyone felt that way about him. So whether he was doing a comedic performance or a dramatic performance or, something in between, Robin always found the truth in whatever character he was playing or portraying for everyone to see, because he was a very vulnerable person. It said throughout the documentary that he was someone who was very affected by things that happened to him and internalized things. And, that sort of affected him in ways that, a lot of people maybe brushed off, but he always, took those things in, and that affected who he was going forward and, his state of mind and things like that. They don't shy away from talking about his Parkinson's diagnosis. They talked to Billy Crystal about when he first told him about it. And they, started seeing the interviews that Robin around this time was not 100% there, as they say. He's just sort of starting to forget lines, and doesn't have the presence of mind as he once did. He just wasn't the funny light to the world that a lot of people know him as in public. So they sensed that something was off, and then later we found out he had, in the autopsy, I believe, he had some form of dementia. So that's another thing that affected, his brain and everything, and probably likely did contribute to his suicide. And seeing the interviews about his suicide, people just can't talk about it. This is 4 years ago now. This was didn't just happen yesterday, but sometimes it definitely feels like that. These people talking about him and talking about someone who was such a light to the world going out the way he did, it's not an easy thing to watch. It's hard to see these people talk about their friend, someone they knew, and seeing that that's how his life ended is still something very sad. Ultimately, his story is kind of a sad one. His life ended in a way that we never thought it would, but he's been through so much too at that point. He had that big heart surgery they talked about his addiction to drugs and cocaine and alcoholism and his relapse of alcoholism, before the heart surgery and things. So going to rehab and getting better. He went through so much already, and to see him have to resort to what he did, it's just very sad. I'm not blaming him for what happened. Obviously, he was sick at this point. His brain was not internalizing things the correct way. They said that he was getting misinformation. His brain was not working properly when this happened. So it sucks that the way this went down, but this documentary definitely paints a complete picture of the man. He wasn't always a perfect guy. He kind of cheated on his girlfriends and things like that. It shows a little bit here and there. And that doesn't slander him in any way. It just shows everyone that he was a human being. He wasn't just this genius, ball of energy that most of the public saw him as. He was a real person who had real feelings and was prone to being down a lot and not really being that guy 24/7. When he was behind closed doors, he was a very quiet guy. So, or at least for the most part, especially in his older days. So if you're a big fan of Robin Williams, you have to check this out. It's something that I would recommend for anyone to see, even if you're just, passingly familiar with Robin, if you know him in Aladdin or something like that. It's a great documentary on its own, and it really gives you, like I said, a complete picture of the man behind that manic personality. So I feel like I had to talk about it, so I think you guys should check it out. So let me know what you thought of it if you have seen it in the comments below. It's a really good documentary, and I think you'll get something out of it. So thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you right back here on the Awesome Walter YouTube channel very soon, and I'll see you later.